Hey everybody, E5 here. Welcome back to another Darkest Dungeon 2 video. So I had not planned on putting out another video this soon, but we are just hot on the heels of an important announcement coming from Red Hook in the past 24 hours, giving us a preview at some of the major features planned for the December update, right ahead of the holiday insanity. And while this isn't a major delve into details, I think it is an important update to think about and hints at evidence to our prediction about what the end game for Darkest Dungeon 2 might look like. So let's just jump into the post here real quickly and talk about its primary points. Greetings, Protégé. In the wake of our early access launch, the team has been hard at work clearing up some loose ends and implementing many quality of life improvements that were unfinished at the time of launch. Our upcoming patch, slated for mid-December, brings together a number of features and improvements, most notably boss trophies. In order to access the mountain, you must kill a biome boss and mount its head on your coach, which sounds really awesome, both in sort of design and concept, but also just as a direction for the game. We'll come back to this. Paint jobs are coming. Alternate textures for the coach have been added to profile progression, so right out in style. Dark runs. Okay, so after you've leveled up your profile a bit, the academic cache in the valley, the tutorial zone, will award a new coach upgrade. The Infernal Flame, which pins your torch at level 1 and will provide an experimental experience for our most daring players. So we're going to talk more about this too. I think this is actually kind of fascinating and especially attached to the Oasis node. A new node has been added to all biomes that allows a hero to fully heal their stress. So those, 3 of the 4 of those points are really big, especially the boss trophies. We also have multiple profiles coming, which just makes sense if this game is ever released, say, on console or just in general for us creators. It's kind of nice to have that. We're also seeing hero, monster, and balance adjustments, bugs, and quality of life improvements. And then at the very end here, they say, looking ahead to the new year, you can expect new monsters, biomes, bosses, and playable characters to be added at a regular cadence, and will provide more transparency into our early access plans after the December patch is released. So there are just a couple pretty important points here worth examining for a second. Most notably the reveal about boss trophies. The notion that you are required to completely clear a lair and then, kill a boss from one of the biomes in order to access the mountain is pretty great. So aesthetically, this sounds great. To earn a mounted head onto the stagecoach, it adds some meaning for your run, but it also adds a much needed level of difficulty into this game. Layers have just kind of been a little bit weird thus far into early access, given that, other than experiencing them, I guess, the cost reward just hasn't been super great, especially when they can be, nearly run ending if you just plummet affinity and really, stress ramp. And so now at least you'll have to strategize choosing and completing one layer in order to even reach the top, which is a great design decision. I spent a couple months this year co-producing guides to Slay the Spire, another very popular roguelike, and I constantly get a sense that Darkest Dungeon 2 is kind of a repackaged Slay the Spire. I know that's a gross oversimplification, but there are some major exceptions. The themes are different. One is a deck builder. The other is, this sort of Darkest Dungeon, rigorous stress and group combat system. But they're both turn-based, and you could easily compare these systems, replace the cards and the relics you get in Slay the Spire with, hero builds and trinkets in DD2. But the comparison is especially valid when thinking about map movement and these maps looking so similar. The pacing is also very similar, and now we also have a key requirement just to access the top. So in Slay the Spire, in order to reach the very end boss, you need to be collecting keys on your way up to unlock the last section. One way of doing so is to track down and take on empowered elites, which are very comparable to the lair bosses in concept. And if you make it to the top in Slay and you don't have the keys, then your run just sort of ends. Nice try. You didn't get through to the very, very end. So you can't push forward and then progress to the final boss room and basically attempt to unlock the next level of ascension. So given that we've, just put out a big video breaking down Darkest Dungeon 2 and thinking ahead to what might make for a fun, replayable, end game to this roguelike version, I can't help but feel that this just builds a stronger case that we're likely to see an ascension difficulty level applied to either, each individual chapter or confession at the beginning, or some kind of an ascension chapter once the others are completed. Maybe even the application of a Hades heat system, but there's just too many similarities here between both games now to feel like this doesn't make sense as a strong move given the precedent set by the success of Slay the Spire. One aspect of our Slay guides, by the way, is that we strongly suggest players seek out elite fights in Slay the Spire when they can, since it gives you sort of a test of ability and build, and gives you the important rewards which set you up for the end game. And I feel like DD2 is now poised to sort of follow suit in a very similar strategy. Eventually we'll see higher difficulty runs, dependent on killing the lair bosses, not only just to get the key, but in order to get the trinkets and the gear that you need to actually beat these, beat the bosses at the end. But let's talk about dark runs here just for a second. The new Infernal Flame. So once your profile level is high enough, the first cache of loot in the tutorial zone may give you, I guess, the Infernal Flame, which you can equip to the stagecoach, and it will pin your torchlight to 1. Basically set a modifier for each biome, giving enemies powerful buffs and resistances. So I'm not sure we're actually seeing more rewards yet with low torch in DD2. Torchless in DD1 is popular, but becomes kind of a meme once you understand it and you stabilize. Once you get the hang of it, it ends up playing like an alternate version of the game, rather than, a significant challenge mode necessarily. So hopefully Torchless in DD2 is made a little bit more interesting. But this also, just an interesting experiment on Red Hook's end. They've talked openly about how they observe and borrow from the game's community to see how people are attempting to challenge themselves and then play off of it with different mechanics and modifiers. Tyler has said, several times that they've already planned a lot of this stuff, but I'm betting that, the Infernal Flame serves as a decent sort of trial run for replayability and to, to really reach out to people who are trying to make this more interesting and more challenging. And just a couple of hours ago, they actually tweeted out this clip of the Infernal Flames animation, which I think is pretty neat looking. So we're really not far off now then from seeing people roll around in, pimped out mystery machines, complete with custom paints, flashing lights, and giant boss hood ornaments. Okay, the Oasis node. So let's just talk about the Oasis node. This makes the addition of Oasis nodes pretty interesting. I find that there are several frustrating aspects of map movement in the stagecoach, and one is just that while characters heal very well over time on the road, there's little you can do to affect their stress levels. And I gather that's probably intentional, but this addition feels like, something important ahead of the coming requirement to fully complete at least one boss layer to make it to the end. And with the introduction of Torchless, allowing you to prioritize, finding these nodes and cleaning up a bit before you make a dive at a boss, or if the run is just going south, which you can only kind of really do with hospitals currently, I guess, are being really choosy. And again, all of this makes scouting more valuable the more difficult the game becomes, and Red Hook has to be very happy about that. So, lastly, when it comes to refinement and fixes, the only thing that I'm really hoping that we'll see is just a little bit more cleanup in terms of the interface. Just as an example, we have a good amount of holes and confusion around things. Very few people know at this point that, speaking of boss layers, you can actually re-kit your hero abilities in between the levels of a boss layer by pressing default C, and then bring up your character panels. You can't access coach inventory in this menu, but it would be nice to see these things either highlighted and made more obvious or addressed, if not intentional. And importantly, the preview ends with this bit about, expecting new monsters, biomes, and bosses, playable characters, but at a regular cadence. And this piece here, with more transparency into our early access plans after the December patch is released. All of this sounds great, but has me wondering if we might even just see a roadmap come out either late December or early New Year. We'll just have to wait and see. But as always, I appreciate you guys coming with me down the rabbit hole here as we react to what's coming and guess at what could be down the road. And it's these kinds of reveals coming from Red Hook that make me feel a lot better about the game's direction, frankly. So make sure to subscribe for more updates and everything else Darkest Dungeon, and I'd love to hear from you guys what you think about some of these features. Looks like we might be in for a very long December. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.